Hello, I'm Tracey Chisholm from the new Rannoch Day Centre. I'm a deputy manager. Just to give a bit of background, COVID forced us to look at the way we could support our clients who were most vulnerable in a different and safe way. When the first lockdown started, many of our staff were actually retasked to other essential services, so we were left with a small core team of staff. So at that point, we actually had to look and see who we could offer outreach to. So obviously, we had to prioritise which clients needed support from staff. So we had a small core team who were going out and doing outreach and providing personal care, lunches, some emotional support to clients and carers, particularly clients who were living with dementia. On top of that, we ensured that every other client and carer who weren't able to have a face-to-face visit were phoned every week so that we could check on their well-being and obviously put in support if we needed to. Initially, we found that carers and clients appeared to be coping pretty well. I think they were resigned to the fact there was this lockdown. At that point, we thought it was going to be quite a short-term thing. However, as the time went on, the pressures really did start to show, and we were able to respond quickly to offer additional support. Some of the positive things that have come out of the situation, as our staff team have gradually returned to our service, we've actually able to develop our outreach service, and it's developed quite organically. So we've been taking new referrals, we've been able to offer additional support to all our clients now. When I talk about support, clients are working towards outcomes with staff support. So they're looking at things that they're maybe interested in. Sometimes it's a bit of reminiscence. Sometimes it's a bit of history research, baking, walking, supporting clients to attend appointments. The outreach model, which we had never actually done before, has actually become very person-centred for some individual clients, particularly clients living with dementia. One gentleman in particular actually found the building quite overstimulating, and sometimes he could become very distressed, and we did have to give him a lot of reassurance for him to feel comfortable here. He in particular has actually flourished in the outreach model, and his wife is actually finding that he's a lot more content, and the relationship between them has actually improved. So, in circumstances like that, the outreach has provided the carer with support and respite, but it's actually reduced the stress and distress for the client living with dementia. Another good thing, staff relationship with carers has become much closer, and there's a renewed sense that we're actually a partnership and we're sharing the care of their loved one living with dementia. The staff team have also been able to see people living in their own home and how a person living with dementia copes in their own environment, and we've been able to work with the individual to build on these strengths through agreeing outcomes that the client would like to achieve. Also, in providing the outreach, the staff team have been able to monitor individual home situations and daily living skills. And because they're in someone's environment for a good 3 hours, they're actually picking up on things that maybe other care supporters might not pick up because their time's very limited. Also during COVID, we found that the usual protocol and barriers to access support have been a lot more relaxed, and this has actually led to a much more efficient referral process for many of the services. Another positive thing that has come out of our change in service is that we've developed a programme of virtual day opportunities. So a lot of our clients are actually able to access some activities online and on Zoom, as well as having the outreach visits. Some of the things that we have sort of learned for the future, because our staff team were depleted quite a bit to begin with to support essential services, staff have actually had to re-establish some relationship with clients, and this has been more difficult for clients living with dementia, as in some cases the staff member hadn't seen the client for maybe 6 months. We have also noticed there's been quite a marked cognitive decline in many clients living with dementia due to the lack of structure and also the stimulation, not coming to the centre, but also not seeing family and friends and keeping up with their usual activities. We're finding now that clients are starting to really miss each other, and now that there's the more confidence in the vaccine, are really keen to come back to the building. Another challenge we found is that because of the change in restrictions, we've constantly had to adapt our service. So when the stay-at-home message came in and the essential travel after Christmas, this curbed the type of outreach we could provide, and it did lead to a bit of confusion and disruption for clients. Looking to the future, I feel that social care has done a really amazing job of underpinning the NHS during this time, and I think now's the time to look at making best use of the service going forward. And I think we're going to have to be creative and be innovative, and hopefully the barriers which were in place before COVID, which have since been much less, hopefully going forward that will stay the same. With regards to our own service, because outreach has been such a positive model, we are now going to go forward or offering a building-based service as well as an outreach service, and including the virtual day opportunities, so that each client does have a day opportunity service that's individual and unique to them. In doing so, we're going to build on the strengths the staff team have demonstrated during the pandemic. A lot of our staff have been lone working during the pandemic, and they have become more confident, they're much more autonomous in their decision making, and it has been lovely to see them develop and grow, and that can only benefit the clients and the service as a whole. I feel as well that we're also in a strong position to build on the partnership working, which has developed over the last year. We have worked closely with the NHS and voluntary sections, and I think that is something that we will definitely continue to work on.
Hello, my name's Shelagh. I work for PCAVS in Perth. I joined them as their support worker for carers of people living with a diagnosis of dementia. So just to say a little bit about the effect of COVID-19 and the lockdown on the carers that we found. Straight away, PCAVS put all staff onto doing support and wellbeing calls, and that was for over 1,000 carers, not all with a diagnosis of dementia for they're cared for, but obviously there's quite a few within that number. The difficulties that they found most, carers found most, was the lack of all services, and services having been stopped at very short notice, with no word of what was happening, where else to go, and they very quickly found themselves moving from a family member or relative, husband, wife, son, daughter, to being then a full-time carer, 24/7. Respite time, there was absolutely none of this, not even for 2 hours a day for anybody. So we found a lot of families were going into crisis a lot quicker, or that's before any intervention could happen. So we did a lot more referrals to our colleagues within the access team. And that was really about respite for the carer more than anything else. There was very little intervention that could be done before that point of crisis. We also found that for carers, a lot of the decisions had to be made about their cared for going into a care home, because sadly either the dementia journey had been a bit quicker or they just weren't coping. So through carer stress, there was people accessing care homes, and that led to a lot of guilt from the carer's point of view. The unknown, they weren't allowed to go in and visit their cared for. They couldn't even picture where their cared for were within that place. Visiting, as we all know, was very restricted, and a lot of the time nothing. So carer stress, again, was stress and guilt. There was a lot of that around those situations. That also then sort of fed into carer isolation. They then had absolutely nobody at home. They'd gone from full-time caring to, well, what will I do now? What can I do now? And again, there's very little for them. Accessing appointments with whether it be hospital or GPs. Again, people were only allowed to go in themselves, so the cared for would be asked to go in for the appointment, and the carer being asked to stay out in the car, and the doctor or whoever would give them a telephone call because their cared for was unable to relay things that had happened within the appointment, or even unable to understand and answer the questions that had been asked. So there was a lot of carer stress around, where doctors, etc., being told everything that they had to be told, and they very much felt that they were being kept apart from their cared for person. They weren't allowed almost to be their voice. So yeah, carer stress has been very difficult throughout lockdown and COVID. Having said that, within the telephone service that PCAV's put in place, regular phone calls to people, we got a lot of positive feedback. I'd just like to say some of the quotes, which were, "PCAV staff are our lifeline. There's nobody else that we speak to. We always have a very enjoyable chat. And sometimes that's all that was needed, was just somebody different to talk to and have a normal everyday conversation with them. It was nice to be kept in touch. Had it not been for PCAVs, I would never have coped. Staff were always very helpful and they listened to what I had to say." When we did then manage to do some home visits with some of our staff, the visits gave me a bit of me time. So me time for the carer, that valuable hour, couple of hours, to themselves. And as we know, that me time is extremely important to carers and carers of people living with dementia. So the initial response, our day service had to close. All our staff were making calls to our carers. Staff had to work from home. We had to get equipment for everybody, laptops, phones, internet lines in some cases. Daycare staff were making phone calls as well. We had to access grants for buying equipment, whether that be for staff or for carers, to allow them to join online. But we also, one of our staff members runs online groups for carers, and these have been extremely popular, extremely well attended, and extremely well organised. So that's been a real positive for carers of what has been put in place for us, and we would hope to keep that moving on. So moving forward, we're really looking at peer support groups for specifically carers looking after a person living with dementia. Myself as a dedicated dementia worker, and making strong working bonds with others within the area, whereby we can all work together to support our carers and their cared for. Thank you.